We are now 2/3 of the way through a buying process before we ever engage with a sales rep. That's what the power of the internet has done. Right? So we know the current best practice is content, content, content. Right? Seth Godin, 1999, he wrote a book called Permission Marketing. Raise your hand if you've read the book. The rest of you need to read that book. There's going to be a couple books I'm going to talk about, and that is really one of the ones you need to read. It really sets the forefront of what marketing automation will be. And the fascinating part was it was written in 1999 before really any of this technology existed. And he is really a great thinker. Everyone knows who he is, but he's really an awesome thinker. So that's the best practice, right? Content is king. We all knew that. Now let's talk about some other ones. If we look at this slide, it's going to talk about the amount of tools that we had in 1960 or 50. I forgot where I started. It was 5. You had direct mail, you had television, you had radio, you had print. There wasn't a whole lot. Right? Now you look at that today, and we have over 60 different mediums that we can operate on and market on. Right? In the future, that trend is going to continue. So we're now going to have to be managing multiple mediums and platforms. Right? Having a strategy for every platform might not be the best. It might be better to have a strategy and then look at mediums as just places to publish content. Right? But regardless, it's cross-channel. We have to be cross-channel. There's so many different channels out there, we have to market on all of them. So another best practice we all understand is cross-channel. Let's talk about another one. Right? The more content we produce, it's a basic economics, right? Supply and demand. You increase supply, demand goes down. The amount of content that's going up online every day increases, and it will never decrease. It actually increases every day more and more and more. So what does that mean for the content that is online that we're putting up there? We're now competing with more content. That means our content's less valuable inherently. Right? We've got so many other things that someone else could read. Why would they read our content? Right? So the only way they're going to read our content is if it's relevant, engaging, if it's fresh. Right, this is Jay Baer. Jay Baer is another great mind in the marketing world. You should really probably be following Jay. He runs an agency called Convince and Convert. He's got a new book out called Utility. I'd highly suggest looking up Jay, following Jay. Yeah, it's a great picture, Jay, though. Yeah. He doesn't talk about me a lot in his presentations. I'm kind of sad. Anyways, so the current best practice is relevance. You have to be relevant to be engaged with. Right? So that's another one we all understand. Right? Well, why are we doing all this online marketing? Well, it's because it's lead generation. That's why we're all here. That's why we all have jobs, is to generate leads and to keep our businesses going forward. So we use this content to get people's email addresses. And how do we do that? Well, we ask them to fill out a form. Right? Seth Godin was talking about forms back in 1999. He talked about how they should be short, how you should have progressive profiling, how you should be able to track somebody so you don't have to ask them the same questions over and over and over. These are things that these were published in 1999, which means he probably wrote them in 1997 or 1998. Right, that's a long time. When we look at the statistics, what we're going to see is that still to this day, not a lot of people follow this best practice, but it's been a best practice for a really long time. Now, here's why we follow Seth's words. This is one of my favorite pieces of research. It's about how people lie on forms. Right? So my two, I guess, and I'll just do a survey. Raise your hand if you ever like answering your telephone number on a form. Yeah, one person almost raised her hand, but she took it back down if you didn't see that. That's how much no one likes answering that, right? So 65% of the time we'll lie. If we have to fill that answer out, we're going to lie. Other questions, custom questions, right? 68% of the time somebody's going to lie. Why? Because we don't want to answer your questions. I just want to engage with your content. I don't want you calling me right now. I'm not a lead. I don't want to give you my telephone number. Right? So these are a lot of the different pieces and parts of why we need to have these best practices. Right? So use short forms. Use progressive profiling. These are some basic current best practices. Now what's the other best practice on this? It's, well, then you need to track people. And why do we need to track people? Well, it's because we look at people inherently different now than we used to. Because the technology will allow for it. We used to just look at segments and say, hey, I've got VPs in New Jersey. Right? But as we all know, everyone is different. No one in here is wearing the same outfit, by the way. Right? We're all different. We're all individuals. Why do we treat people in a group? Well, we shouldn't. We know we don't. We know that if we were the best we could be, we would take the time to personalize every individual piece of content. We just can't. We physically can't. There's not enough people, not enough time, not enough resources. That's why we're looking at technology like marketing automation to help us do these things. So we can actually look at individuals as I know what you've done, I know who you are, and I can then dynamically market to you as an individual. And that's the power of this new technology. Right? So the best practice is track individuals, engage on a one-to-one basis. That next book, I told you I was going to send you a couple of books. Peppers and Rogers, One-to-One Marketing. Came out in 1974. Right? These are some old books in terms of technology world. Right? 1974, I don't even know if they had personal computers back in 1974. If they did, they were massive and you couldn't own one. Right? So these are some really cool things from way back in the day. All right, so now that we've kind of gone over and reviewed best practices, well, we all agree those are some pretty just standard best practices. We all kind of heard a lot of those before. This is a time where you can nod your heads, say yes, cool, or no. Anyways, just to recap, right? Tools, there's a lot of tools. On strategy, inbound is a big hot word. Content creation, convert, forms, right? We know, and then we get down to people. We didn't really talk about people. So let's talk about people really quickly. Let's look at who's using these and how well they're doing. All right, so we're going to hop through and go to the first one. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this down and we're going to look at 4 different segments of business. The way I broke this down was enterprise, Fortune 500, mid-market, SMB, and then SaaS-based companies. What we're going to do is look at how they adhere to the best practices and what else can we learn from these people. Now, the first thing we're going to do, and it's kind of an inside joke. It's not totally inside baseball, but another funny fact. I have lots of funny facts, by the way. I found out I'm very quirky as the older I get. My father was a shop teacher, and so was his father. So I kind of grew up in a wood shop, and so furniture was something I always really just was kind of around. So there's a big furniture joke in here. So play along, see if you can find the joke. It has to do with the chair. I'll give you a hint. All right, so follow the chair. All right, so Fortune 500. So what we look at when we look at Fortune 500, these are large, huge, massive companies, right? There's only 500 of them. Now, for the purpose of this, there's only 38. And why am I saying there's only 38? I looked at the entire Fortune 500 list, and I scrubbed it all the way down so that we could get a really good idea of the usage and the best practices. I cut out anybody that could not use these best practices. So if you were B2C, if you were quasi-B2B, B2C, I didn't look at IBM because half of IBM's business comes from personal computing, which a lot of these techniques have not been adopted yet. So it would be kind of hard to say, oh, such a small percentage, when really when you kind of narrow your focus to only the people who could instantly utilize these techniques today, you see a very different picture. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the 38 B2B, totally B2B specific companies on the Fortune 500 list. And here's what we find out. Right? How many of them use content marketing? 98%. Pretty good job, right? They all get the idea of content marketing. But now when you look at bottom right, do they use a form to protect that content? It's only a quarter. Only a quarter of the people even use a form to get somebody's email address. They're not even collecting leads on their website 75% of the time. It's just baffling to me in the first place. Now go up a step. 28% of them don't use less than 10 questions. Right, let me rephrase this. I had to use, and I'm not saying 10 questions is best practice. Really best practice is probably 3 questions. There's only 1 or 2 using 3 questions, if that. So I had to bump it up to 10 to even have a number that looks somewhat okay, right? So even saying 10 questions on a form is acceptable, which I would say it's not. Still only 28% of the people can even meet that criteria. We had people asking 27 questions on a form. 27. Would you ever fill out 27 questions? No, and that's probably why they did it. They said only if someone's going to fill out 27 questions, they're really qualified. It's like, we're not masochists. I just want some content, right? I don't want to hurt myself to get it. But then you come down and you look at how many of them use marketing automation. Only a quarter of them use marketing automation. So if we were to look at the best practices that we all say they're pretty standard best practices, Fortune 500 is not doing a really good job. Right, so let's take a look at the next size company, mid-market. Right, it's a little bit nicer chair, a little bit more sleek. You get the joke? All right, maybe not. All right, so mid-market. So we got 98% using content marketing. That's really good. Then we hop down and we see, hey, forms, they drop down by 3%. But if we look at the adoption of best practices on those forms, it jumps up to 43%. And if we look at the use or the adoption of marketing automation doing one-to-one marketing, they're now up to 59%. So they're doing a much better job. Right? And this trend is going to continue. We're going to look at SMBs. An IKEA chair, get the joke? All right, gosh. I shouldn't have to explain it, but I just feel the need to. All right, content marketing. 98% of the people, once again, use content marketing. Protecting content with forms, almost half. Right? That's a really good sign. How many people are using best practices on those forms? 89%. Using marketing automation, 66%. right? So the smaller the company, the more nimble they are, the more able they are to adapt these best practices. Probably a lot less bureaucracy. That 27-question form, I guarantee you the head of sales was the one who probably stuck their heels in and said, we're going to use this form. And marketing's probably cringing and saying, that's horrible. And the sales guy says, but you're not giving me quality leads. So this is how we're going to ensure that we get quality leads. Right? It's just how you look at the problem and the ways people try to solve it. Now I'm going to throw a curveball. We're going to look at SaaS companies. And it's the big, famous Herman Miller Aeron chair. If you ever get the chance to get one of these, I suggest it. They're awesome. This dude's nodding his head. He sits in one. Oh, yeah. It's like the luxury chair. It's like the Maybach of chairs. That's a car for those people that aren't car fans. All right. So anyways, why are we looking at SaaS companies? And I'm going to walk you through why we're looking at SaaS companies because it's a very specific reason. Right? So first off, just because you have the best technology does not mean you're going to dominate a marketplace. In fact, it doesn't really mean anything. A lot of people that have awesome technology are out of business today. Right? We've all known companies. We all might have worked for companies that had amazing technology but could not win, could not make it successful. Right? So it's not a precursor. What you have to have is a combination of awesome technology, awesome sales, and awesome marketing. You could also say customer service. There's a lot of other things behind the scenes. But from this side, we need to have sales, marketing, and the technology to be supported. Right? If you have those three things, you're going to do a pretty good job in the marketplace. Right? So let's look at SaaS. Right? This is how SaaS started. These little tiny guys up against massive companies. Right? Oracle. Oracle's massive. Right? Salesforce came in against Oracle and all the other big players. These guys have tons of money. They've been at the game for a really long time. They have massive treasure chests. So you got these new startups coming in, and they came in every industry. Who works for a SaaS company? Raise your hand. Who uses SaaS tools? Raise your hand. Right? They've dominated every industry. Right? So let's look at another thing. Client count. When they started, they had little tiny clients. And they were trying to pull people away from massive companies who had these big entrenched clients, who had these great relationships where they were being wined and dined every night by Oracle sales reps and the whole industry. Right? So you had David versus Goliath. And what happened? David just trounces. David just runs all over the place and laughs all the way to the bank. This is Mark Benioff. Anyone in San Francisco, you guys know Mark Benioff, right? Yeah. So Dreamforce, a small event that happens, 80,000 people, comes here every year. Yeah, so I mean, it's a small company. First SaaS company to $1 billion. So, I mean, you can look at SaaS and say there's an easy reason why we're looking at them from a marketing perspective. They had great technology, we all agree. But they also had to compete against these dominant players in the marketplace. And they have competed and they have won. Right? Look how many of us use a SaaS-based technology. Look how many of us work for a SaaS-based company. Right? You were usually an upstart or a spin-off of another company inside that industry. Right? So that's why we're looking at these guys. They had to do something right to win, and it wasn't just the technology. So what else did they do? Right, so if we compare them to all the other demographics we looked at, the only one where they are not top is in this middle market, and that's using forms. They just about are equal on using forms with the small and medium-sized business. But most of these are mid-market players. What I looked at were the 17 largest SaaS companies in the world. Right? So there's some pretty sizable companies. When we looked at other sizable companies, they weren't even close to using best practices. And SaaS is blowing them away. And that helps to show you the fact that technology plus sales and marketing. Right? Well, what else are they doing in marketing? Let's look and see if we can learn anything from these guys. This is their toolbox. So I'm a big fan of you got to have the correct toolbox before you can really build cool stuff. My dad was a shop teacher. Toolbox analogies just come with the territory, right? So retargeting software. Who knows what retargeting software is? Who uses retargeting software? Yeah. It's a great tool. Am I saying it's being used best? Am I saying these guys use it effectively? No. I'm saying they use it. Right? So I'm saying it's something you should definitely look at into the future. Talking about ad management. This could go anywhere from, DoubleClick all the way through to there's tons of ad management platforms. Right? But it's making sure the right message gets in front of the right people. 70% of them do that. We look at marketing automation, the highest adoption rate of any industry is 76%. And they've been using marketing automation for a really long time. Another interesting fact, every marketing automation vendor in existence, there might be, Adam, is there any that are not SaaS? Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there is. If there is one, they're probably not doing too hot. 88% track user experience. Right, so they're doing some awesome things. User experience is something that most marketers have neglected for a while. Remember, heat mapping was really important when we were designing our first websites. Right? We should go back and start looking at those things in terms of engagement. How are people engaging with our content? What's relevant with our content? User experience is highly important to a marketer because it's all about conversion. Optimizing for conversion means optimizing for user experience. The better the experience, the increased conversions we can get. And they get that. And on average, they use 10 tools to track user engagement, user experience in their website. All right, so just kind of use that as a benchmark. How well are you doing on that? Now we're going to get to what I consider the fun data. This is the fun stuff. This is the new stuff. All right, so what we're going to look at are consumer trends. And what I did is I went and I pulled 330 consumers. Now these are all B2B consumers. And the reason I wanted to pull just consumers and not marketers is because marketers think very differently than a consumer. We did a report recently. It was called Marketers Are From Mars. And what we found was that when you ask marketers certain questions and you ask their consumers that same question, there's vastly different answers. Right? If we look at social technologies, marketers are usually the first to adapt social technologies or any type of new marketing technology. And you think about why? Well, it's because we all have the same problem, right? We've all got to generate leads. So if a new tool that might be able to kind of be this, like we get the early adopter advantage and we start generating massive amounts of leads before anybody else, of course we're going to take that chance. So we adopt those new technologies before a lot of our consumers do sometimes. And we think that anytime a new platform comes out, we have to have an instant strategy for that. Right? So I wanted to ask the consumers, right, what do you think? How do you engage? And that was the main question, is how do you engage? Right? And so I asked them a series of questions, and let's go through that research. I mean, it's pretty compelling research, I think. So first off, I asked them, how do you start engaging? 96% of people said they all start on Google. Right? Everyone kind of got that. We all know we start on Google. Google made $46 billion last year, by the way, billion with a B, on search marketing. Yeah, or 46 overall. It was something like that. It's massive. These are Google Glasses. I don't have a strategy yet for Google Glasses, but if anyone works for Google and you want to send me a pair of glasses, I'll be glad to get some strategy for you guys on the glasses. It's a shameless plug